They say home is where the heart is, but sometimes it's also where the battle begins. In a quiet corner of Cedar Hollow, nestled between white picket fences and manicured lawns, one man built more than a shed. He built a legacy, a tribute to his late father, a space born of love, not rebellion. But when a power-hungry HOA president decided it didn't fit the aesthetic, everything changed. What followed wasn't just about rules or property lines. It was about control, corruption, and the quiet strength of a man who refused to be pushed around. This isn't just a story about a building. It's about standing your ground, even when everyone tells you to back down. And it all began with a notice on the door. Daniel Reyes never imagined a shed could spark a war. It was early spring in Flagstaff, Arizona. The mountain breeze was still sharp in the mornings, but sunlight filtered through the pines with the promise of warmth. Daniel, a retired aerospace engineer, stood in the backyard of the home he had bought 20 years ago, a cup of dark roast cradled in one hand, eyes fixed on the structure he had built with his own two hands. The shed wasn't just wood and screws. It was a tribute. His older brother Marcus, a carpenter and combat vet, had passed away the year before. They'd planned to build the shed together, a space to tinker, store tools, and maybe even teach his kids a thing or two about woodworking. When Marcus died, Daniel took the blueprints they had sketched on a diner napkin and built it alone. Every plank he nailed felt like a conversation they never got to finish. So when Daniel found a neon orange violation notice stapled to the shed door one Monday morning, something inside him twisted. Violation. Unapproved structure. Immediate removal required. HOA Enforcement Committee. He stared at it in disbelief. His neighborhood, West Hills Estates, had a homeowners association, sure. But his property, on the edge of the development, had always been exempt. He had the original deed and a county zoning letter to prove it. Still, he figured it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone new on the board didn't realize. So he called the HOA office and was told to bring his complaint in person. That afternoon, Daniel walked into a tan stucco building squeezed between a frozen yogurt shop and a dry cleaner. The inside smelled of paper and perfume sanitizer. Behind the front desk sat a young man with a headset who barely glanced up. "Appointment?" he asked. "I was told to speak with the HOA president. My name's Daniel Reyes. I received this." He held up the notice. The receptionist made a call. "Have a seat. She'll see you in 5." It was 15. Then a woman in her late 50s with a pearl necklace and a plastic smile appeared from the hallway. Her voice was lacquered with fake warmth. "Mr. Reyes, I'm Margaret Colton, HOA president. Let's chat." They sat in a small office, windowless and sterile. Margaret folded her hands on the desk like a school principal about to assign detention. "I understand your frustration," she began, "but the shed doesn't meet HOA design standards. It's not compliant with the color palette, and it wasn't approved through the proper channels." Daniel leaned forward. "Margaret, I'm not under HOA jurisdiction. I've reviewed the CCRs. My home was built in '98. The HOA was formed in 2003. It doesn't apply to me." She smiled, condescending, controlled. "Actually, our legal team filed an amendment last year expanding coverage to adjacent properties." Daniel frowned. "You can't retroactively enforce rules on properties that opted out." "I never signed anything." Margaret shrugged, her expression cool and indifferent. "You can hire an attorney if you like, but in the meantime the shed has to go. If you don't remove it by next Friday, we will, and send you the bill." He stared at her, stunned. "You're serious?" She stood. "Quite." Daniel walked out of that office with a sick feeling in his gut. He hadn't signed any amendment, hadn't even been notified. Yet, now, this woman was threatening to destroy something deeply personal, something sacred. That night, sitting at the dinner table with his wife and 2 kids, he couldn't eat. His daughter, Eva, asked if they could paint the inside of the shed pink this weekend. He couldn't bring himself to answer. Something had changed. Margaret Colton didn't just stick a notice on his door. She'd declared war, and Daniel Reyes wasn't going down quietly. Daniel didn't sleep the night after his meeting with Margaret Colton. He stayed up late in the garage, flipping through old boxes, searching for the original deed and property boundary documents. By 2 a.m., his dining table looked like a legal war zone. Maps, county letters, zoning codes, CCR printouts. His wife, Naomi, found him slumped over the table just before sunrise, coffee gone cold in his hand. "You've been up all night?" she asked gently. He rubbed his eyes. "I need proof." "They can't do this." Naomi, ever the realist, squeezed his shoulder. "They already said they would." 2 days later, they did. Daniel came home from running errands to find his backyard swarming with machinery. A flatbed truck, a yellow mini excavator, 2 men in reflective vests, and a third filming everything on his phone. His shed, the shed built with Marcus's spirit, was already half collapsed. Wood splintered like bones. Its door ripped clean off. He didn't yell at first. He froze. And then, as if waking from a daze, he sprinted toward the backyard, yelling over the hum of the equipment. "Stop! Stop right now!" One of the workers, mid-sledgehammer swing, hesitated. The one filming stepped forward. "Sir, you're interfering with an approved removal under HOA compliance. We suggest you contact your representative." "This is my property," Daniel roared. "You're trespassing." They didn't stop. Instead, they finished the job with disturbing efficiency. In under 40 minutes, the shed was reduced to debris. They didn't even attempt to preserve anything inside. His father's old toolbox, his daughter's hand-painted flower pots, a box of wooden scraps he had planned to turn into shelves. They left behind a single sheet of paper taped to his patio door. Invoice: $3,082 for structure removal and site sanitation. Payment due within 15 days. Daniel stood among the wreckage in silence. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the torn-up yard. Eva cried when she saw the remains. His son, Luke, tried to console her, even though he barely understood what had happened. Naomi walked out and covered her mouth in horror. Daniel didn't speak, not even as the tears welled in his eyes. He knelt beside the broken pieces of his father's workbench, fingers trembling. That night, Daniel didn't eat. He didn't talk. He stared at the invoice for hours, until Naomi gently took it from his hands. The next morning, something in him had changed. He shaved. He ironed his shirt. He put on the watch Marcus had left him. And for the first time in years, he pulled his old briefcase out of the closet. Naomi watched as he poured fresh coffee. "You going somewhere?" He nodded once. "The recorder's office, the zoning commission, maybe a lawyer." A pause. Then, with quiet conviction, "I'm going to bury Margaret Colton." She didn't try to stop him. She only handed him a protein bar and kissed him on the cheek. "Then make sure you do it legally." Daniel smiled for the first time in days. "That's the only way she'll feel it." Daniel's first stop was the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, a beige building that smelled like old coffee and bureaucracy. The clerk, a young woman named Tasha, greeted him with the practiced disinterest of someone who had seen every kind of paperwork problem imaginable. "I need property line records and HOA jurisdictional boundaries," he said, laying out his parcel number and address. Tasha typed for a moment, then raised an eyebrow. "Huh. That's odd." Daniel leaned in. "What's odd?" She swiveled the monitor slightly. "Your property's listed as exempt from the Cedar Hollow HOA. According to this, your house was built in '98. HOA jurisdiction didn't expand until 2004. Daniel felt the tension in his chest start to unwind, slightly. "So legally, I'm not under their governance?" "Not unless you opted in through a rider agreement when you bought the place." "I didn't." Tasha printed the official document. Then they're operating way out of bounds. Daniel thanked her, took the paperwork, and moved to his next stop, zoning and code enforcement. There, a bored-looking inspector named Derek took one glance at the invoice Ethan had been issued and let out a low whistle. They charged you $3,000 after trespassing? Yes. Your house isn't even part of their chartered control. That's a felony-grade overreach. Derek turned serious. Want me to open a complaint with municipal code enforcement? Yes. And I'd also like to know if they pulled any demolition permits. Derek chuckled darkly. Spoiler alert, they didn't. By the end of the day, Daniel had collected official documents proving his home was never under HOA jurisdiction. Property surveys confirming the shed was fully on his land. Proof of unpermitted demolition activity. He ended the day in the office of a local real estate and civil rights attorney named Marla Kinsey. Marla, a quick-witted woman with cat-eye glasses and a background in municipal litigation, read the summary with increasing interest. Let me get this straight, she said, tapping her pen on the edge of her legal pad. An HOA with no jurisdiction over your property issued a bogus violation, ordered an illegal demolition, and then billed you for it. Yes. And then mocked you when you tried to resolve it? Yes. God, I love when they make it easy, she said, grinning. I'm going to enjoy this. Within 48 hours, Marla had filed a cease and desist against the HOA and a formal notice of claim for property destruction and trespass. But she had an even better idea. Let's not just sue, let's dig. Together, they started peeling back the financials of the Cedar Hollow HOA. What began as a simple defense case turned into something much more ominous. Marla's paralegal discovered irregularities, budget allocations that didn't line up, landscaping invoices without vendor information, an unusual payout to Grayson Property Consulting totaling $8,550 for community harmony initiatives. Wait, Daniel said, narrowing his eyes. Grayson? As in Margaret Grayson? Marla nodded. That's not just overreach anymore, that's self-dealing. If she funneled HOA funds to herself, we're talking civil fraud and potential criminal charges. Daniel leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. This isn't about a shed anymore. No, Marla agreed. This is about power, and Margaret Grayson's about to lose all of it. It was a Wednesday evening when Daniel stood quietly on his front porch, watching the sunset bleed over the rooftops of Cedar Hollow. The light touched every corner of the neighborhood, every fence, every driveway, every porch swing, and yet everything felt fractured beneath the HOA's overreach. He knew now, this wasn't just about him. Margaret Grayson's reign had gone on unchecked for too long. He wasn't the only victim. He just might have been the first to push back. The next morning, Daniel did something he hadn't done in months. He logged into the neighborhood Facebook group. Cedar Hollow Neighbors, official HOA moderated. The page was a curated wasteland of manicured lawn praise, casserole recipes, and passive-aggressive rule reminders. But Daniel didn't post there. He scrolled, quietly, patiently, and then he found them. Posts that had slipped through the cracks before being deleted by HOA admins. Anyone else charged for a mailbox color violation that wasn't listed? Why did they remove our welcome bench? It's been there for 10 years. My son's lemonade stand was fined. They said it was a non-permitted business. He's 7. He took screenshots, dozens. That night, with Marla's legal blessing, he started his own page, Cedar Hollow Voices, Uncensored. Within 24 hours, over 80 residents had joined. Within 72, the number doubled. Many had stories. Some were angry, some were afraid, but all were tired. Daniel posted his story with photos. The shed. The demolition. The invoice. The documents showing he wasn't even under HOA control. The post blew up. Comments flooded in. This explains so much. Dog. They fined us $500 for unapproved solar panels. We're still in debt from that. They threatened my elderly mother with a lien over a bird bath. And then came the direct messages. Quiet, private confessions from residents, too scared to speak publicly. That weekend, Daniel hosted what he jokingly called a lawn chair summit in his backyard. He expected maybe 10 people. Over 40 showed up. Some brought lawn signs that had been banned. Some brought violation letters. Some brought nothing but stories. At the center of it all was a woman named Mrs. Adler, 78 years old, who brought cookies and a printed binder of her correspondence with the HOA dating back 6 years. She fined me $1,200 for my rose bushes being too irregular, she said, lifting a trembling hand. I was recovering from hip surgery. I couldn't even walk to water them. Daniel felt something shift in the crowd. Sympathy turned into indignation. Indignation into resolve. We've been isolated, he said, stepping forward. Intimidated. Fined into silence. But not anymore. He told them about the lawsuit, about the financial irregularities Marla uncovered, and about Margaret's private company taking funds through fake community initiatives. Gasps. A couple of muttered curses. One quiet, "I knew it," he paused. This isn't just about revenge. This is about rebuilding trust, fairness, accountability. A father in the back raised his hand. What do we do next? Daniel looked out at his neighbors, his community, his now united front. We vote, we petition, we investigate, and we expose. The storm didn't come all at once. It began with whispers, just enough to rustle the leaves, but not shake the trees. The first blow landed the following Monday morning. Daniel received a message from Marla, his attorney. The forensic accountant found a misappropriation trail. HOA funds were funneled into an LLC registered under a different name, but the mailing address matches Margaret Grayson's home. Daniel's heart thudded. It was what they'd been waiting for. Proof, not just of arrogance, but of corruption. Real, provable, damning. Meanwhile, inside the pristine walls of the HOA's clubhouse, decorated with community-first banners and sterile paintings of wildflowers, Margaret Grayson was unraveling. Slowly, privately. She'd noticed the change. The stiff smiles from board members. The whispered conversations that paused when she walked in. The neighborhood Facebook group she couldn't control. And then there was the lawn sign. Cedar Hollow deserves transparency. It popped up on a corner lot like a dandelion through concrete. The next day, it was duplicated. Then duplicated again. By Friday, over 60 signs dotted the neighborhood. Margaret ordered them removed. Residents filmed it happening. The video went viral. That night, Daniel's inbox exploded. One message stood out. I'm on the HOA board. I can't stay silent anymore. Meet me at Maple Park at 7. The message was signed only. R. Wallace. Daniel arrived early. Maple Park was still. The evening sun casting a golden glaze across the swings and picnic tables. A woman in her 40s approached him. Sharp eyes, tired face. Rebecca Wallace, she introduced. Our treasurer. At least for now. She sat beside him on a bench and handed him a USB drive. Everything, meeting minutes, financial records, emails she thought she deleted. Daniel blinked. Why are you giving me this? She looked him square in the eye. Because she lied to us. To all of us. And she's using this HOA to fund her personal empire. Furniture, landscaping, even spa retreats billed as board development. I stayed quiet too long. I'm done. Daniel nodded, words catching in his throat. Thank you, he said quietly. That weekend, armed with the data, he and Marla published the Grayson report, a 12-page summary of their findings. Clear, evidence-based. No drama, just truth. They didn't post it in the HOA's official group. They printed it, mailed it, hand-delivered it to every single household in Cedar Hollow. Within 48 hours, residents were holding their own town hall at the local library. No HOA sponsorship. No Margaret Grayson. It was standing room only. People brought receipts, photos, letters. Daniel spoke last. He didn't yell. He didn't dramatize. He simply held up a photo of the shed, the one place he'd built to feel close to his father. They destroyed it because they thought they could. They assumed we wouldn't fight back, but we did. Not for revenge, but for respect. The room erupted in applause. Outside the library, under the streetlight, a reporter from the local paper approached him. "You planning to run for HOA president if there's a vote?" Daniel looked over at his wife and kids waiting by the car. "No," he said with a soft smile. "I just wanted my shed back, and maybe a little dignity." The vote was set for a Saturday. Sunny, crisp air. Too perfect for what was about to unfold. Cedar Hollow's community center buzzed with quiet tension. Folding chairs filled fast. Some residents brought thermoses of coffee. Others brought years of resentment. At the front stood Margaret Grayson, composed, polished, eyes scanning the room like a commander surveying her troops. But there was a crack in her armor, the kind of stiffness only the truly cornered wear. Daniel arrived just before noon. He didn't wear a suit. He wore jeans, a simple button-down, and the same calm expression he used when teaching fifth graders how to tell a lie from a fact. The HOA secretary, pressured by the residents' petition, had no choice but to hold the emergency recall vote. The rules were clear. If 2/3 of active members voted to remove the board, the leadership would be dissolved immediately. Margaret took the mic first. "Neighbors," she began, voice syrupy, "let's not forget what the HOA has done for this neighborhood. Property values have risen, lawns are manicured, streets are safe. Mistakes may have been made, yes, but we mustn't throw away order for chaos." There was a polite, scattered clap, a few loud coughs. Someone's phone rang. Then Daniel stepped forward. He didn't speak from the mic at first. He pulled out a manila folder, held it up, and said simply, "This is a copy of my deed. This," he flipped to the next page, "is the photo of my shed. And this," he raised a printed receipt, "is the $3,000 invoice Margaret's HOA billed me after destroying it." A silence rippled through the room like a dropped glass shattering. Then he moved to the microphone. His voice was even. Not angry, not bitter. "Margaret Grayson overstepped her power. That's not opinion, it's documented. Her HOA extended its authority to properties it had no legal jurisdiction over, mine included. She destroyed private property, used HOA funds for personal luxury, and silenced dissent with fear." He paused. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about who we allow to speak for us, and what happens when that power goes unchecked." He stepped back. No applause this time, just stillness, sharp, focused silence. Then a voice from the back, soft but clear. "I vote to dissolve the board." Another voice, "Seconded." The secretary, flustered but prepared, handed out ballots. Volunteers, neighbors, tallied them in plain sight. 67 votes needed to meet the 2/3 threshold. Final count? 72-11. Margaret didn't argue. She simply stood, gathered her papers, and walked out the side door. No dramatic speech, no finger-pointing, just silence. And then came the applause, slow, unified, relieved. The sound of a neighborhood exhaling after holding its breath for too long. Later that afternoon, Daniel stood in his backyard. His wife Leah brought him lemonade. Their son helped paint a new plank for the shed rebuild, this time with neighbors offering to help, tools in hand and pride in their eyes. No more yellow notices, no more fear, just peace. And as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over fresh lumber and healing soil, Daniel smiled. Not because he'd won, but because truth had finally echoed louder than power.